If you are feeling a deep internal shift that you can't quite name, like something ancient is waking up inside you, then understand this: you are not falling apart, you are being reassembled. You might believe you arrived here by chance, drawn by a simple search for answers, but the restlessness you feel, the subtle tremor in your spirit, is a signal. Your life is approaching a turning point. Your unconscious mind has already started orchestrating events, dreams, and signs that herald not a retreat, but a homecoming to the core of who you are. And I will tell you this with certainty: the highly sensitive person is on the verge of a monumental resurgence. This isn't about luck changing. It's about your soul's refusal to let you remain a spectator in your own life. Your psyche has been speaking for a long time. It communicates through that persistent inner fatigue, the heaviness that comes from overgiving, and the quiet ache of having your boundaries consistently overlooked. When an empath reaches the point where their weariness feels old, not just physical, it is the clearest indicator that a profound inner reversal is underway. Your breaking point is the birthplace of your power. Every collapse contains the blueprint for a return. But only those who are attuned to the soul's dialect can decipher the message within their own fragmentation. You have felt delicate only because the era of your true strength had not yet dawned. Have you noticed a recent sense of disillusionment, of seeing people and situations with a new, unflinching clarity? This is the first sign of the awakening. It's not cynicism, it's sight. You are being guided by an invisible hand to withdraw from what depletes you. A quiet fire is beginning to burn within, not rage, but a deep-seated refusal to tolerate what you once accepted as inevitable. This fire is the archetype of the inner protector, stirring from its long sleep. For the empath, the shadow self isn't a place of darkness. It is the power you surrendered to keep the peace. It is the righteous anger you suppressed to avoid being left behind. It is the truth you held inside to maintain harmony. But there arrives a day when this shadow will no longer remain hidden. You might experience it as a sudden, sharp intuition, a newfound understanding of who truly energizes you and who drains you. You may even feel a sense of guilt for this discernment, conditioned as you were to believe that setting boundaries is unkind. The soul, however, is not concerned with the etiquette of a wounded world. It is concerned with your wholeness. So the resurgence often begins with a rupture, a powerful dream, a necessary conflict, a painful loss. Something shatters the old paradigm and reveals the reality you'd been avoiding. You wake up and realize you can no longer be the silent anchor for everyone else's emotional storms. You can no longer absorb pain without voicing your own needs. You can no longer stay in environments your intuition is screaming to leave. When the psyche is ignored, its voice becomes a roar, and for the empath, that roar is unmistakable. You may have thought your sensitivity isolated you, but I tell you, that very sensitivity is the compass that will guide you back to your authentic self. It was never a curse, it was a navigation tool. Every overwhelming experience, every betrayal, every heartache was not evidence of your weakness. It was the training ground for your triumphant return. The unconscious was preparing you with a curriculum so demanding only a soul of your depths could complete it. Though you may have felt shattered at times, you were never broken. You were being deconstructed so you could be rebuilt without the distortions you once carried. This resurgence is unique. It doesn't depend on external validation or achievement. It unfolds quietly, internally, in the sacred space of your own being. It begins when you cease the inner war, when you stop trying to fit the mold others made for you, when you turn inward and ask, what truth lies beneath my exhaustion? What purpose is hidden within my deep feelings? What destiny is encoded in my wounds? The answers don't come through rational thought, but through symbols. You might dream of high tides washing away old structures. This is the unconscious reclaiming territory from outdated identities. You might dream of shattering glass. This is the breaking of false self-images. You might dream of a path through a misty wood. This is an invitation to step into the unknown where your true nature awaits. The psyche is always in conversation with you. Every dream, every gut feeling, every physical sensation is part of a profound dialogue between your conscious mind and the vast intelligence beneath it. And as this dialogue deepens, something remarkable occurs. You start to feel your own presence again. It's subtle at first, a low hum in your chest, a warmth behind your breastbone. Then it grows into a sense of inner stability, a groundedness you thought was lost. You feel less absorbent, less swayed by the emotional currents of others. You begin to sense where your energy field ends and another's begins. Slowly, the center that you once poured into the world becomes undeniably, unshakably your own. This is the dawn of your return, not to the person you were, but to the person you were always meant to be before the world taught you to abandon yourself. And I promise you, once a sensitive person reclaims their own center, no force can ever pull them back into the cages of their past. As this inner fortitude solidifies, your external world must shift in response. The empath, who once felt like a sponge for everyone else's feelings, starts to become a conduit for something greater, the authentic self. And when the self awakens and begins to restore its sovereignty, your outer life cannot stay the same. You'll notice that relationships based on dependency begin to feel empty. Situations where you once accepted disrespect become intolerable. Obligations you carried from guilt lose their grip on you. This isn't an act of defiance, it is an act of alignment. When the unconscious initiates a comeback, it often starts by deconstructing the version of you that made other people comfortable with your wounds. Let's be clear, your wounds have served others. Your silence made them feel unchallenged. Your compassion made them feel absolved. Your gentleness made them less accountable for their own darkness. So when you begin to rise, some will push back. This resistance is not proof you are wrong, it is proof you are no longer propping up their unconscious patterns. I want you to grasp a fundamental truth. The empath's resurgence is not a loud public spectacle. It is not a victory celebrated with external applause. It is the quiet revolution of a soul returning to its rightful home. It happens internally, long before the outer world reflects the change. The first movement is always inward, always subtle, always symbolic. The psyche pulls your energy back from the external world to fuel your own metamorphosis. The quietest revolutions change the universe within. You may feel drained, withdrawn, deeply thoughtful, even alone, but do not mistake this for a setback. It is a sacred incubation. Just as a chrysalis seems still from the outside, the empath in this phase is undergoing a radical rewiring that no one can see. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your emotional body is releasing attachments that no longer resonate with your truths. Your unconscious is reorganizing its entire symbolic landscape, creating a new internal map aligned with the person you are becoming. This is why old habits suddenly lose their appeal. This is why familiar routines feel constricting. This is why your spirit refuses to engage in dynamics that once seemed inescapable. You are being prepared for your emergence. And as you stand in this liminal space between the old self and the new, you may feel disoriented. Empaths are experts at sensing the emotional landscapes of others, but this stage demands you learn to sense your own. You are being asked to feel your emotions not as alarms for you to caretake others, but as communications from your deepest nature. This can feel unfamiliar, even frightening, because the world trained you to distrust the intensity of your inner world. You were taught to be placid, agreeable, forgiving, yet beneath that manufactured calm was a vast sea of unspoken truth. When the empath first encounters this ocean, there is a fear of being swept away. But being overwhelmed only happens when you fight against what the psyche is revealing. If you surrender, if you let the waves have their voice, you will find they are not disorderly. They are rhythmic, ancient, and deeply wise. They carry the lost instincts of your lineage, the silent stories of your past, the intuitive warnings you dismissed, the dreams you set aside, and, most importantly, they carry the architectural plans for your resurgence. This comeback is not a straight line. It moves in spirals, drawing you deeper into yourself only to lift you to a higher vantage point with each cycle. One day, you may feel illuminated, clear, and sure of your direction. The next, you may feel uncertain, vulnerable, and fragile. This oscillation is not a sign of failure. It is the signature of transformation. The psyche operates in tides, not straight paths. And the empath, having spent a lifetime navigating the tides of others, must now learn to sail their own. There will be a moment, perhaps it has already started, when you feel a boundary forming from the very depths of your being. This boundary does not come from bitterness, though frustration may accompany it. It arises from a newfound loyalty to your own essence. You simply lose the ability to betray yourself to keep the peace. You lose the capacity to diminish your light in the face of others' expectations. You find yourself speaking truths you once held back. You find yourself leaving situations that once held you captive. And you do this not from malice, but from a place of deep inevitability. The psyche will not permit a return to fragmentation. As your inner authority stirs awake, the world around you begins to shed its disguises. You perceive patterns in people you once missed. You see the controller behind the charismatic grin, the void behind the inflated ego, the need behind the victim story. This perception is not judgment, it is vision. And when the empath sees with true sight, when their intuition is no longer clouded by hope or duty, they become impossible to manipulate. This is the phase where many empaths worry they are becoming cold, detached, or unkind. But in reality, you are becoming defined. You are learning to stand in your own psychic space without merging with the emotional fields of others. You are mastering the sacred practice of self-containment. For too long, you confused entanglement for connection, people-pleasing for kindness, and silence for strength. Now, the unconscious is offering you a new way to exist. Not as an absorber of emotion, but as a broadcaster of your genuine truth. When you embody this authenticity, your intuition sharpens to an almost preternatural degree. It's no longer a vague guess about someone's mood. It is a deep, penetrating insight into their very psyche. You sense core motivations, hidden wounds, projections, and unspoken fears with a clarity that can surprise you. This ability was always there, but it was buried under layers of exhaustion. When the empath stops leaking life force into draining situations, their intuitive faculty ignites. And with this illumination comes another profound understanding. You begin to comprehend your own life story in a new way. Memories surface not to torment you, but to release you. You view your past not through the lens of sentimentality or hurt, but through the lens of archetypal patterns. You recognize the roles you were cast in, the emotional duties you performed, the unconscious agreements you signed long before you knew you had a choice. These insights may feel weighty, but their purpose is liberation. The empath's comeback is not about inventing a new person. It is about revoking the unconscious agreements that forced you to leave yourself behind. There is an inner child within every sensitive person who has been waiting for you to come home. This child does not need you to shield them from the world. They need you to protect them from the parts of you that learn to betray your own truth. They need you to unlearn the habit of self-abandonment. They need you to see that you were never too feeling, too deep, or too intense. You were simply gifted with the capacity to perceive what others choose to ignore. And now, as your resurgence gains momentum, this inner child becomes your greatest guide. There arrives a moment in the empath's journey where the old self dissolves in a mix of sorrow and release. You might grieve for relationships that were never truly balanced. You might mourn the years spent giving to those who could not truly see you. You might mourn the person you had to become to survive in spaces that were not designed to hold your depth. But this grief is holy. It is not the grief of an ending, it is the grief of a rebirth. As the old self falls away, the new self does not erupt violently. It emerges gently, like the first light of sunrise over a still landscape. You feel a lightness in your heart that has no external cause. You wake with a sense of expectation, as if a future self is calling you forward. You begin to find moments of pure joy that spring not from outside approval, but from the simple, profound act of being in harmony with yourself. This is the self drawing near. And when the self draws near, your life cannot stay small. The world becomes meaningful again. You notice synchronicities that feel like personal messages from the universe. Numbers seem to follow you. Dreams become more vivid. Strangers say things that resonate with an uncanny truth. The unconscious is no longer satisfied with whispering. It begins to speak in signs. And you, the empath, hear it all perfectly, because your sensitivity was never a flaw. It was always a finely tuned receiver. This is the stage where your comeback accelerates powerfully. The energy that once seeped out of you now circulates within, creating a potent feedback loop. You feel less depleted and more empowered, less anxious and more rooted, less impulsive and more perceptive. The empath who once absorbed the chaos of others now becomes the calm eye of the storm, the place where turbulence naturally settles. And yet, the most significant shift is still to come. As you continue this inner journey, the psyche unlocks something that has been dormant for a lifetime, the instinct for self-governance. This instinct is more ancient than your pain. It is older than your childhood, older than the roles you played, older than the emotional habits that shaped your connections. It is an instinct that belongs to the core, self, the central organizing force of your entire being. And it awakens when the unconscious decides that the season of fragmentation is finally over. You may feel it as a quiet, unwavering certainty growing within, as if your inner world is no longer willing to be shaped by the demands and expectations of others. This is not an act of rebellion. It is the long-awaited recalibration of your entire reality. For most of your life, you allowed the feelings of others to enter you as if you were a home with no doors or windows. You learned to move through the world by tuning into its shifts and tempests, believing that if you could just understand the emotional climate around you, you could stay safe. And for a time, that strategy was necessary. The child who senses instability must become an expert in the household's weather patterns to survive. But now, as your awareness expands, you begin to see that the very skill that once protected you has become the chain that holds you back. You were not meant to simply absorb life. You were meant to actively, passionately engage with it. The empath's resurgence demands a fundamental reorientation of energy. Instead of flowing outward by default, your life force now circulates within, generating a subtle but powerful field around your psyche. You may notice that individuals who once depleted you now seem unable to cross into your emotional space. Their moods no longer feel like hurricanes you must endure. Their projections no longer feel like facts you must believe. The reason is simple. The unconscious has revoked your participation in the dynamics that once fed on your empathetic nature. You are no longer available for that role. If this message resonated with you, if you felt seen and understood, then do this for the channel winds of thought. Please hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that this is important content. Your journey back to yourself is the most important victory you will ever win.